Welcome to Nonprofit Thrive, a podcast where we learn from the humans who are helping nonprofits succeed in the digital world. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome. I'm Ben Freda, host of the show, where we share the stories of leaders in the nonprofit space, the people behind the organizations, foundations, and companies that help nonprofits change the world. This podcast brought to you by BFC Digital. BFC Digital, we help nonprofits thrive on the web. If you're a nonprofit communication staff member responsible for your organization's web presence, I'm sure you know that having an effective web presence can be an absolute game changer for your ability to change the world, accomplish your mission. But you probably also know how frustrating and difficult and weird running a web presence can be. At BFC Digital, we help our clients succeed on the web without all of that pain. We handle everything from the smallest bugs, site maintenance, all the way to strategizing, designing, developing new websites and new web apps. And we do it by being friendly, being human, and without ever asking you to fill out a support ticket and say goodbye to support tickets forever. So go to bfcdigital.com/podcast to get more information, schedule a free consultation. And if we do end up working together, if you sign up there, you'll get 50% off your first month of us working together. So today, on the show, I have Chad Franzen here of Rise 25, who has done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs and CEOs. So today, special for our first episode, he will be interviewing me. We are flipping the script. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Ben. Great to be here. How are you?
I'm good. I'm psyched. This is the first podcast I've ever done. So I'm glad to be doing it with you. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you. Hey, just so we can get myself and all of your listeners familiar, why don't we talk about you and your background and how what led up to BFC Digital? What were you doing prior to starting the company, and then what led you to start BFC Digital?
Yeah. So let's see. It's kind of a long story. I before I started BFC Digital, I actually graduated from college during the .com boom. In Silicon Valley. And I would say a third of our graduating class quit to do startups. So I was going to go to law school. That was the plan. But I took a year off to do a technology startup. And it was something I'd never done before. I was just interested in doing it because everyone else was doing it, but I didn't know anything about computer science or coding or anything. So I thought, whatever, let's take a year off before law school starts and just try something new. So I wanted to do a website company. I had a best friend from preschool, actually, who was going to be doing, the marketing side. And he was really interested in car repair, which is kind of bizarre looking back because I live in New York City. I don't own a car. I haven't been in a car in 3 weeks. He was really into that. And so we thought, let's make a website about car repair. So we spent a year working on a website about car repair. Eventually, it turned into a website where you could comparison shop for car parts. I learned a bunch of technology, how to code, all that stuff. He did a bunch of marketing and strategy. And at the end, we were making $1,000 a month, but it cost us $1,100 a month to run the whole thing. So we were losing $100 a month, and I ended up being like, oh, okay, well, it's time to go to law school. So I put that to bed. I thought that was going to be my only foray in technology. Moved to New York City, went to law school for 3 years, was a lawyer for 2 years, and just did not love it. It was just not a good fit for me. It was the sort of thing where you're doing a lot of stressful, crazy work until midnight, work until 1 a.m. On really boring stuff. That was the problem. It was a great combination of super stressful on super boring stuff. I'm happy to be stressed out if it's something you care about. Work till 1 a.m. if it's a really great cause or something. But in that environment, I was reading emails written by executives for Citibank about trying to highlight it was just horrendously boring. So I ended up jumping ship after 2 years and working with a great friend of mine named Ryan, who runs a shop in DC. At the time it was called PicNet. Now it's called Nonprofit Soapbox. He's kind of reverted what he's working on now, but worked with him for 3 years doing web development for nonprofits. Was a great experience. Loved the clients, loved the work. 2008 rolled around, hit the company really hard. We closed our New York City office, and I got laid off from that. He's still going in DC, and I thought, well, maybe I should be a lawyer again. That's, I guess, what I should do. I was like, I guess I'm going back to that. But I had a couple of clients left over from that experience who weren't working with him anymore and wanted me to do, blog posts for $30 an hour. And so I thought, maybe I could turn this into something. So I slowly, eventually, after a couple of months of wrangling about it, decided, look, I really just got to try it. So I ended up getting a few clients to help with very minor sort of web update kind of work. And it sort of grew from there. That was 2010. And yeah, we since then we've started, we've done a lot of website development, website design, website maintenance, website support for great nonprofit clients, most of whom I met back then and sort of met other people and grown into what we are today. That's a long answer, but
yeah, that's a great story. Great story. What, so you never have second thoughts about not becoming a lawyer?
Man, there are certain things you see like on TV. If you see like Law and Order or you see courtroom drama, I mean, how great would it be to be the person who stands up there? But the reality is, I mean, when I was a lawyer, no one went to court. Nobody went to court, right? Like we were working on settling cases. That was our job. So, I don't regret leaving that world, the corporate litigation world. I do sometimes in the middle of the night think, man, it would be great to be doing trials, prosecution, criminal defense, that kind of stuff would be fascinating. But I think you really need to love that, like really want to do it well. Because it's hard, it's stressful. You really have to, give it your all. And it just wasn't something that I think I was going to be in that spot.
So when people go to your website, bfcdigital.com, first thing they see is we help nonprofits thrive and other things on the web. What is it about nonprofits that are so attractive for you to work with?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's definitely not what a lot of web development firms focus on. So a lot of web development firms focus on, companies, small business. You get into this thing about traffic, about sales, how to convert, all that kind of stuff. What's great about nonprofits is that it really their goals are different, right? Like they're a lot of nonprofits. Honestly, if they were to succeed, they would go out of business, right? Like we have a client. We have a client working on climate change, right? If the climate stopped changing, that would be awesome. But they wouldn't have a job anymore. So it's different, right? Like it's there. A lot of times it's a different goal. So and a lot of nonprofits have a lot of different goals. So sometimes nonprofits trying to bring people together, right? Bring people together to address a particular issue. Sometimes nonprofits are trying to communicate about advocacy. So trying to change people's mind about a certain issue. Sometimes nonprofits are in direct services. So they're actually trying to literally help people today, like with, income assistance or food or resources, right? Like we had a great client through the New York City Schools Department. Turns out 10% of kids that go to New York City public schools don't have a house, don't have a home, don't have a permanent address because they're living in a shelter or they are migrants or whatever. And so how do you mail home a report card? Right. Like you can't do that. How do you get resources to the families when you don't know their address? And so how do you do that? Well, digitally, right? Like that's how you're going to do it. So we built in a portal for people to understand that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different ways that nonprofits are changing the world online. And it's a lot more interesting to me personally. Then sort of the classic, like, what's the SEO? How do we chase the sales? Can we increase the conversion rate on our shoes or whatever? Not that there's anything wrong with shoe stores. That's great. But it's sort of more of a mathematical question. And for these nonprofits, there's sort of a much more holistic attitude towards what they're trying to do, which I just find interesting. I mean, I just think it's fascinating.
Was there a experience in your life, your childhood, or sometime in your early adult life that kind of inspired you to go in this direction?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Silicon Valley, so there were sort of two things that were going on there when I was a kid. One was that we were all environmentalists and involved in social movements and interested in social change. That was sort of in the world for us. I mean, for when I was growing up, at least in the 80s, we would go on field trips to the state park, and they would teach us, about development and stuff like that. So I found that interesting when I was growing up. And then also the other thing that was happening was everybody was part of some sort of entrepreneurial technological thing. So, we lived in a town that was close to IBM's research center. Google was there. Apple was there. My dad got married at Steve Wozniak's house because he knew Steve Wozniak. Everybody knew everybody. I mean, yeah, and we knew I guess they knew his wife through this preschool thing. Anyway, but it was just everybody knew everybody, and so it was just a very technology focused area. And so I think when I got older, I was thinking what feels authentic to me to do, what feels like I would sort of naturally understand the people in it, technology for, positive change, right? Like technology for nonprofits, technology for environmentalists, technology for social change, that kind of stuff just really felt like pretty natural place to go, I think.
So there are, a lot of web design companies out there. What is the reason that people choose you? Maybe what's the big benefit or uniqueness of working with BFC Digital?
Yeah, so I think the main reason I think our clients like us is because we're human to them. I think so many of our clients we call them refugees, have come from experiences with other web developers, and they often have the same complaints. Web developers are not responsive, right? They don't get back to them on time. Things go way too long. They don't want to hop on a call and talk about what the challenges are. Web developers are very focused on what the scope is of the engagement, and not so much like, hey, what are we trying to do? So I think the reason people choose us, it's not because we're the cheapest. It's not because we're the whatever. We're not the biggest. But I think we are probably some of the nicest people in nonprofit technology that you will, you'll encounter. At least that's what people say. And sort of the most committed to sort of helping, sort of big picture things get better. So, so I think that's probably the answer.
I used to work for like a gym, a gym that people could join for membership. And then I decided to go somewhere to the YMCA, a nonprofit. And even though that we did basically the exact same thing as the gym that I used to work for, it was like a completely different world operationally. Have you found that working with nonprofits is maybe different than other, for-profit organizations in terms of their operations?
Yeah, totally. And it's really good to, we've had a lot of experiences with nonprofits. And I think a lot of times if people aren't used to working with nonprofits, it could be, there's a different pace, right? Often funding works differently. So there will be grants that people are working from, and they need to be applied to certain things. There's a lot of interest in the nonprofit world and stakeholders. So making sure that the people who are going to be affected by whatever you're doing, a website or a project or a web app, have a say in what's going on. And so we've had to develop a pretty, a good process for, getting information and understanding what's going to be built before doing it. There's a lot of sort of unique things that go into it. I think the other thing that I think is really good, and I think some people outside the nonprofit space can get frustrated by this, but there is an interest in making sure that the impact that you're having is positive. So whether it's a diversity type initiative or analyzing the effect of what you're going to do on the wider world. So for instance, I think AI is a good example. For-profits have been pretty quick to pick up AI tools and stuff like that. In the nonprofit world, this is just me pontificating, but I do think there's a little bit of a slower uptake of that kind of stuff because people are concerned about, are we going to be putting people out of work? What is the effect of AI on the rest of the world? And they sort of want to know before really diving in. So, and that's one of the, and that kind of stuff is sort of one of the reasons why I'm excited to do a podcast, honestly, is to have conversations with people about, hey, what are we doing in nonprofit tech world? And what is the effect of that going to be? What works, what doesn't? AI is a good example. And just having those conversations, I think is going to be helpful, interesting, helpful, useful.
So when a prospective client comes to BFC Digital, I know there are kind of like two, once they inevitably decide to work with you, there are two, there are two maybe kind of different directions they could go. Tell me a bit about those.
Yeah. So, right. We do two things really. One is we help nonprofits with big new website projects or web app projects. And then the other thing is we do ongoing support and maintenance, evolution of existing stuff that is out there. So those are really the two different ways. I think in general, because of the ways nonprofits are funded, oftentimes they're big projects that need to be done from a grant or on a yearly basis or something. We do like also doing that ongoing stuff. I think that people kind of forget sometimes that if they do already have some technology in place, it might make sense to iterate on it slowly. Like, hey, maybe a new homepage, right? Or maybe a new landing page, or maybe a new piece of functionality that you can add to what you already have, and sort of do that over time and start to measure the results and think about whether you really want to devote, 75 grand or however much it is into one big thing, or whether you want to maybe try and chip away more slowly. So we've been focused on really both of those, but trying to ease people a little bit toward the sort of evolution process. I think in general, the more you can learn and get feedback from what you're putting out there, the better. Allows you to change, allows you to sort of change paths a little bit, decide, hey, maybe we don't want to have a network member directory on our site. Maybe we want to spend that time and energy on maybe a resource library or better search or whatever it is. But anyway, those are really the two big things that we can help people with.
What are some top questions maybe people have before working with you?
That's a good question. I mean, there are, I'll tell you, we actually did a YouTube video on this. We had a very short period of time when we did a few YouTube videos. And one of them was about what I wished people asked us, because they will often ask us stuff that, ask whatever you want. This is great. We want to have an exchange and understand what you're interested in. But a lot of times, people ask about accessibility. That's a big topic now. So, I do find that, when people ask about accessibility, they just want to know that we are paying attention to it. They're like, hey, are you paying attention to accessibility? Yes, we are. And everything we do is accessible, and we make things accessible. And we know how to do that. And we're making sure that we do that kind of stuff. So that's a big one. One thing people really want to know, too, is how they're going to manage it after it's built, which is a great question to ask. A lot of times people go into a project thinking, I don't care how you build it, just build it. But you really don't want to do that, right? Like, you really want to know that if you're at a nonprofit and you're going to be managing this website after a while, let's say it's a membership hub for your members to go in and, get resources on the you have an annual meeting coming up and they need to grab the agenda and grab things. So, how are you going to put those things up there? Like, is it going to be easy? Is it going to look crazy when you add 3 documents instead of 2 documents? Is it going to look super janky? And how to fix that and blah, blah, blah. So another question people ask and should ask is how am I going to use this? How is it going to work? How can you help me make it work? I mean, so those are 2 of the big ones. And then I think people just want to know that who are your, what nonprofits have you worked for? Do you know Nonprofit World, is another one. And it's kind of, I don't know that there are a few, but not many web development firms that exclusively do nonprofits like us. A lot of times they will, clients might get proposals from all kinds of web development firms. And there are great web development firms out there that do for-profit work for sure. But you just want to make sure that they're going to understand the uniqueness of that space.
Yeah, sounds good. So let's get into your podcast a little bit. This is, as we mentioned, this is the first episode. What made you decide to start the podcast?
I have never done any marketing at all. We've gotten all of our clients through referrals, just people we like working for. And I knew in the back of my mind, that's not the most sustainable thing, but I think it comes from growing up near San Fran, is just, man, salesy stuff just drives me crazy. Like, I could never be a salesman. I could never go and be the flashy kind of saying. It makes me afraid to even try doing that. It's not even a salesy kind of environment. We're working for nonprofits, right? So it's not really, so it's a bit of a challenge. Like, how are you going to sort of get the word out there without being a dork, basically. I don't know if I can really say that, but so that was one thing. And then the other thing was, I really felt like personally, I have been head down in working on websites and web apps for nonprofits for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And which has been great, but I do want to start sort of understanding what other people are doing, understanding better what other people are working on, what's working for them, what's not working for them, what we should be looking forward to next year. There are some great things nonprofits are doing on the web. We just had a project that we just finished with a client called Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition. I really want to get the executive director on one of these podcasts because they have this great program in Oregon where their goal is to protect the Oregon coast, right? Like to conserve the Oregon coast. And they have something like, I don't know, a couple of hundred volunteers who have each adopted 1 mile of Oregon coast, and they're called Coast Watchers. And they agree to every quarter go and walk their entire mile of Oregon coast and fill out this detailed report about the conditions. So what has changed? What's the litter situation? What's the wildlife situation? What's the public access situation? See anybody parking where they're not supposed to park? See any plastic, and take photos of stuff. Are there any seals that are stranded? Take photos of them. And they publish this big report online with images and stuff. And you can go to the website, OregonShores.org, and you can search through all of the reports that have ever been taken and see how are things changing? What are the photos being taken this year versus last year? Are there more snowy plovers there? I guess I learned this through the project. Snowy plovers are an endangered species. It is just such a great idea of a way to like engage your supporters, right? To do something really cool, to give stakeholders and people who care about the coast something to look at and see how the work is working, to give even like state assemblymen and assemblywomen who work in government something to look at too, and get involved in the issue. It just seemed like such a great idea. And it just, I want to learn more about that kind of stuff. Like, what are the cool things that people are doing, leveraging, all nonprofits have budget issues. All nonprofits don't have as much money as they need. How can we use web to really like do some cool stuff? So that's what's most exciting for me to really get into.
Sure. Yeah. There's all kinds of nonprofits out there. I'm sure, people are doing great things. So it'll be great for you to learn more and for your listeners to learn more. So,
yeah,
we'll certainly look forward to future episodes. It's been great to talk to you today, Ben. Congratulations on completing your first podcast episode, and we'll look forward to future ones.
Hey, thank you so much, man. Really a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ben. So long, everybody.
Cool.
Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Thrive podcast. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.